All right, and we're live. What up, Monero Mateo? Okay, so I've got a classical, juicy Monero Mateo video for you today, and we're going to be discussing once again the Monero Macro Thesis, this super hyper mega bullish case, and we're going to be digging through some news articles. We've got the tabs pulled up, and there actually has been a good number of developments recently that compound our case, that make us understand that we are on the right track with this. We have made the right choices with using Monero as opposed to other cryptocurrencies and sticking true to our philosophy that if it ain't private, it ain't worth it. Okay. And so, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about some developments in regards to price controls, again, unrealized capital gains taxes, and we're going to be talking about some cool developments that have been going on with Monero, the technology itself, and the ecosystem that is blossoming outside of it. We've got some really cool stuff coming. There's a fella who is working on subscription payments, which is really going to be good for me in my business because I've got some people who are on a recurring payment schedule for me with their monthly accounting, and they like Monero. And so to use the subscription feature where they can automatically have draws from their Monero wallet to pay me for my services is going to be really nice. A lot of business utility with that. There's also an XMR tip super chat thing, which is coming online right about now. I just set one up. I set up a content creator page on this website, and it's integrated into Cake Wallet. And if you'll remember, Cake Wallet used to be a lovely sponsor to our channel. We love Cake Wallet. Very, very efficient and robust Monero wallet technology. Shouts out to Vic and the team. Go set up a XMR tip account, and I've got a tab pulled up. More information on that to come, but the whole ecosystem is coming along, and I believe I saw something today on full range membership proofs. Apparently, that's getting ever closer to the rollout, and that's going to make the privacy on Monero go more nuclear than it already is. It's going to make it pretty much like indestructible. I don't want to overstate it. I don't understand the technology fundamentally at all. Okay, I'm not the tech guy. You guys know that. I'm just somebody who puts private cryptocurrency into a context that normal people can understand and why it is they want to get involved in this stuff. And so, regarding that, we're seeing ever more people get onboarded and interested in private cryptocurrencies. And we've seen this trickle over the last few years regarding ever more interest in private cryptocurrencies. We've seen some people comment increasingly on the privacy problems with Bitcoin. And just recently, we had Tucker Carlson, we had Russell Brand. We're going to go through some of those today. And it just seems like there is this gaping hole out there of understanding where once people have that switch flip, the trickle that we've been seeing is going to turn into a flood, as I've said for 3 years. Okay, because there are so many dots that we've linked together here on the channel regarding why it is this stuff makes sense and why it is people want to use this, that you just have people put together some of these dots. It's sort of like you have a forest, right? And you have a bunch of dry brush that has been falling onto the ground. And it's been happening that way for a long time. It's just the buildup of more data points, the buildup of the context, the buildup of the technology. And at some point, a fire is going to be lit. I don't know who is going to light it. It's not going to be me. I'm a nobody, and most of the people in our space are nobodies. But we're increasingly having more prominent people come into this space, like Roger Ver, for instance, who's a big Zano guy, a big Monero guy now. And you have some other people like Aaron Day, who's a really interesting fella. He's got a bit of a following himself. If you don't know who Aaron Day is, he's a very interesting guy. Has a lot of great analysis when it comes to Zano and Monero and their place in the world to come with CBDCs and such, and tokenization of everything. And that's something we've talked about a little bit, is the Internet of Things. That's coming on board pretty quickly. And you just have bigger and bigger names that are getting involved and getting interested in private cryptocurrencies. And you get like a Tate, or you get like a Tucker Carlson, or you get one of these guys who starts to understand Monero and talk about it. I'm telling you, a fire is going to be lit, and it's just going to spread like wildfire. And at that point, you're going to have the battle truly begin between the sovereigns and the crypto bros. It's not happening with Bitcoin because, as we've talked about here on the channel with our crypto coup d'etat video series, crypto, for the most part, is being integrated into the legacy financial system and the control grid. This is something that's been happening slowly but surely, and with the oncoming of KYC, AML, artificial intelligence, all of these things, it's creating a surveillance grid. And you're not going to want to be on this grid, I'm telling you. And they're enticing people into this thing by fattening their bags, by turning it into a religious type thing and exploiting people's nihilistic existentialism of modernity. And it's going to, at some point, shift to private cryptocurrencies because people are going to realize they've been deceived. That spark is going to die, and I already feel it dying. There's just not that much of a cool factor left with a lot of these big cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's just not there. And the next cool thing, I'm telling you guys, is going to be private cryptocurrencies. It's going to have that renegade factor that Bitcoin had back in 2009, 2010. And in fact, I did a consultation with an original Bitcoin bro. I mean, a true Pokemon found in the wild, a Mewtwo. This guy was mining Bitcoin back in 2009. He was mining like a Bitcoin every day. Think of this, okay? And, back then it was like $3 he was telling me, and he's big on privacy coins. And a lot of the OG Bitcoin bros are big on privacy coins now. And they don't go out there and, make a big fuss about this. They're slowly getting into it. They're silently getting into it. And it's becoming a factor. And they're getting into Zano as well, too. They're finding that interesting as well. You've heard me talk about it. In Zano, it's moving up. More and more people are getting interested. I think it's at $4 or so right now. And the last time we spoke about Zano, I believe it just hit 2. Okay, and you guys know we've been talking about Zano for a couple of years now. It's finally kind of in the expansion phase and the marketing phase. More big names are getting into it and are realizing the value of it. And there's a lot of cool developments with that, which we'll talk about later. And hopefully I can have one of the guys on soon. Mr. Quibbs, shouts out to Mr. Quibbs, doing a great job out there. Hopefully I can interview him soon because I have more time now to make videos, and I've just been kind of in a grind for the last couple of years. But let's dig into the content. Let's talk about what's going on because this stuff is kind of interesting and exciting. So Kamala Harris, you guys know I'm not big on politics, okay? I hate talking about politics. It's a soul-sucking affair, but it is a reality we have to contend with. And Kamala Harris is now coming out saying that we need to have price controls. The corporations are getting greedy. They are wanting to take advantage of the younger folks and profit off of them and, I guess, starve them to death, right? And so now she really wants to starve them to death by creating price controls, which we all know if you study Austrian economics or just have a basic understanding of this kind of thing. You understand price controls will lead to shortages, as Zero Hedge comments here, and that'll lead to the growth of black markets. Okay, it's the same thing we saw back in 2020 with the personal protective equipment. Okay, when the grocery stores and Amazon, they did not. Well, Amazon, you started to see hiking a little bit, but they kicked those people off. But when they didn't adjust the price to meet the demand, a lot of people bought out the supply. And where did that supply go? Well, it went to the black market. It went to the D&Ms, the underground markets, and there you could buy it with Monero, obviously for a high price, but nevertheless, you're able to get it. And the same thing is going to happen, I guess, with food. And they're talking about rent controls as well. They're talking about all of these different things that they can do to limit the effect of inflation. And I say limit the effect of inflation because the inflation itself is the expansion of the money supply. It's not actually the increase in the prices. They've already expanded the money supply, okay? Now, traditionally, what you have to do is you have to increase rates in order to accommodate that, in order to pull money out of the economy and then establish an equilibrium. Or at least that's what the Keynesians who are in control of the central banks would say. Obviously, that's something that you should leave up to market dynamics. But nevertheless, they can't continue to increase interest rates. And the reason for that is they're going to prick the bond market bubble. You're going to have sovereign collapses. It'll be the end of the world, right? Proverbially. And, they're going to look for different ways to prevent the impact of that inflation without actually doing what needs to be done. Because if they increase rates, the interest payments are going to go from like $1.5 trillion, which is I think what they are now per year, to beyond that. And it's already a problem as it is. So much money is going to just paying the interest, not even the principal. And the debt is run away. It's like they're increasing the debt by like $50 billion a day or something like that. It's totally going crazy. And so you can't roll over that debt if you have high interest rates, because then you're going to roll over the debt at a higher interest rate, and then that's going to cause the interest payments to explode, and you're that much closer to Armageddon, right? So they're going to start to plug the holes with price controls. That's what we've said for years. And when they do this, that's going to increase the amount of goods and services that will move to the underground markets. And what cryptocurrency has been slowly but surely taking over the dark web marketplaces, taking over the underground markets? Well, it's Monero. Okay. So if Monero is taking over the dark web marketplaces, if you start to have the increase in the war on cash, which has been going on for a decade now, more regulations in Europe are coming out saying that you can't spend over $10,000 in cash. You can't pull out a certain amount of money from the bank without having some suspicious activity report filed on you. That's going to increase as this happens, because they want to prevent money from going into these markets, from going into the underground markets and circumventing their price controls. And so the same thing's going to happen with crypto. They're going to make it more difficult for you to get your crypto to a self-custodied wallet, which is why you see them cracking down on self-hosted wallets as well. And they're also cracking down on Bitcoin privacy with the Samurai Wallet Bros, with the Bitcoin Fog guy, with the Tornado Cash guy. All this stuff plays in. Okay, they're going to try to make it more difficult for you to get your money out of the system as they try to implement these things like price controls. Okay, so you're really going to want to have Monero because you will be outside of the system. You'll be able to get what you need, and you'll be able to get around that problem. So forget about the fact that that's going to increase the price of Monero, obviously. But it's also an insurance policy for when you need to get something you need to get something that you need to get, and you're not going to be able to get it at the traditional outlets because there will be shortages, there will be rationing, etc. Pretty much everything we saw in 2020. Okay, so when it comes to Monero, why is it that they can delist Monero from the biggest exchanges in the world like Kraken and Binance? They can run all these propaganda pieces against it saying it's for the bad guys. Why can they get away with that? Why are they trying to do that? Okay. Well, they're doing that, one, for the reason I just said. So, but why is it that Monero keeps its value? Because it's been sitting at $150 like a stable coin for this long. And despite all these things going on, and that's because there is inelastic demand. And there's inelastic demand because Monero can do what no other cryptocurrency does, which is allow you to maintain privacy at a cheap cost, because it's like a penny per transaction. Okay, forget about the Bitcoin transactions that are going nuclear. With Monero, it's at 1 cent to transact this stuff. So complete private payments, you can transact for a penny, and that is very attractive for a lot of people who actually want to use Monero. And by the way, it's not just for the dark web bros. It's for people like me. It's for some of the people that I work with. They don't want to use transparent cryptocurrencies for reasons that I've talked about here on the channel. I'm not going to go into it again. But the fungibility problem plays into that, and that's going to become ever bigger of an issue as we see KYC, as we see AML make it so that you have dirty Bitcoins, you have some Bitcoins you can't deposit onto exchanges, and you don't want to associate with people who are sending Bitcoin and receiving Bitcoin from certain places because maybe you then are at a higher risk. That will definitely screw things up increasingly moving forward. Okay, so because of that demand for this cryptocurrency, that is not going to go away. It's only going to increase because of what we just talked about. That plays in the super hyper mega bullish case. Okay. So Harris will propose, according to Philip Wegman, what her campaign bills as the first ever federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries, setting clear rules of the road to make clear that big corporations can't unfairly exploit consumers to run up excessive corporate profits. Okay, well, somebody's going to profit. If it's not the corporations, it's going to be the enterprising people who go out there to pick up those things that are on discount and resell it. That's arbitrage. That's what people are going to do. That's what the market does. And where are they going to sell it? Again, they're going to go to the DNMs. They're going to go to the underground marketplaces, and you're going to need Monero to buy it. And so Zero Hedge comments, they say, to follow mile-long food lines, meat coupons, shortages, food black market. Okay. And this just came out today. Elizabeth Warren is apparently on the same agenda, as you could probably imagine. And she says, have you noticed that groceries cost a lot more than they did a few years ago? You're not the only one. Massive food corporations have kept prices up nationwide to, again, exploit consumers and make a profit. It's time to bring them down. Okay, so that's what they want to do. They want to do price controls, and we're seeing price controls, news stories of price controls in Canada. We're seeing it in Europe. This stuff is exploding everywhere. And if you guys have just noticed, over in France and the United Kingdom, there's been like a communist takeover. The far left has become entrenched in political power in those countries, and it's going to spread. Unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, even though we do see a lot of conservative backlash, the forces of evil, like I said in a prior video, they just seem to have it, okay? They can run whatever political chicanery they want to do, and unless there's some big out of left field black swan type reaction that just overrides the political capacities of whatever these people are doing, this is how it's going to continue to go. I hate to tell you that, but that's just what we've got to anticipate, and that's what we've seen over the last number of years. It's not getting better. Okay, so moving forward, I said this. I said, a reminder that price controls are coming. They will lead to the outsourcing of price discovery to the underground marketplace where Monero has for many years assumed dominance. The macro thesis is still in play. Now, somebody asked, they said, what is the Monero Macro Thesis? Doesn't watch our channel, but he's a Monero bro. Shouts out. I said, it basically sums to this. You got the war on cash. You got the war on privacy. You've got price controls leading to underground market boom. You've got Monero dominance in peer-to-peer trade and underground markets growing. You've got carbon consumption controls that are on the way. You've got the crackdown on mixers for non-default private cryptos. You've got the KYC and AML takeover of the centralized exchanges. And then ultimately, and we haven't seen this roll out yet, but there are so many countries now working on this. It's been a long time since we've checked out the Atlantic Council map of all the countries that are working on central bank digital currencies. They're everywhere. They're coming. They're coming, and it looks like they're really going to try to do this. And if CBDCs have come out and they're tracking what everybody's doing, they're telling you who you can and can't do business with, then again, people are going to see value in Monero. So that's the core thesis kind of summed up right there. And I said also, look, when I said you'll need Monero to order Whoppers off the dark web years ago, I was only half joking. Stack those Neros, gents. We will be the true Burger Kings in the world to come. I mean, you never know. But now let's talk about another component, right? Which is unrealized capital gains taxes. Okay. And this is, look, we all know the rich like to hide their money. Okay. There are a lot of very sophisticated ways that they do this. They do offshore trusts. They do different types of trusts. They, in the past, have tried to park their assets in Switzerland, but you know, the private banking features that Switzerland used to offer, not really that robust anymore due to FATCA. We've talked about that in prior videos. You have unrealized capital gains taxes, and you have all of this money that's been made in the markets over the last 10 years. You're going to have people run for the hills. I mean, you're going to have people run for the hills just at the prospect of this kind of action right here, the prospect of unrealized capital gains taxes. So this is from Watcher.guru, just in. Kamala Harris backs President Biden's 44.6% capital gains tax proposal, the highest in history. And the proposal also includes a 25% tax on unrealized gains for high net worth individuals. Okay. Now, first off, as a tax accountant myself, to actually measure the valuations of rich people's assets and to do that every year and then to come up with the liquidity necessary to pay those taxes, it's going to be a logistical nightmare. But these people, they don't understand any of this stuff. They don't even care. They just need money. Again, they're going to raise taxes. They have to pay off the interest payments, which are ever growing. Again, it's another plug that they're going to try to use to keep the system going just a little bit further. And we do have, in a certain way, unrealized capital gains taxes in the form of property taxes, because you know the valuations on homes are rising, and if the valuation on homes are rising, then that means that the property taxes are going up. It's the same thing with personal property taxes for businesses, and I'm not going to get into the technicals of all that, but there already is sort of a framework for that. And we did speak about a certain Supreme Court case back in December called Moore versus the United States. It was basically an argument between somebody who had invested in a business in India, and because of Trump's repatriation tax, which was in and of itself like an unrealized capital gains tax, where all this money which had been parked outside the United States needed to be taxed in order to have some of that money repatriated back to the States. They made the argument that that wasn't constitutional because that's an unrealized capital gains tax, and they hadn't realized that income. And so I did some research. It looks like there was a determination in that case where I'm not going to read through all of this, but essentially what they said was it functioned as a property tax, which is legal, the MRT. They said that it's kind of like a property tax, and there was no definitive ruling on the behalf of the Supreme Court that unrealized capital gains taxes were unconstitutional. They just avoided the topic entirely. They wanted to rule on this specifically, and they still upheld the standard that income needed to be realized before it was taxed, which in my opinion sets some kind of legal precedent for there to be no unrealized capital gains taxes. But we live in a banana republic, man. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if you can trust precedent when it comes to Supreme Court matters. But it says here the majority opinion includes holdings, wealth, or net worth among taxes. Tax. Hold on. Let me read this. It remains open. It remains an open question how the court would rule when confronted directly with a question of tax on unrealized gains. Okay, so that's sort of in the conclusion, according to DLA Piper, without going into all of the details of this case. And Forbes also had an analysis on this, and they go into what I just told you when it comes to unrealized capital gains taxes, the compliance costs, which would be significant. It would be burdensome for taxpayers and tax authorities. It would discourage investment. There are administrative challenges with accurately valuing assets, and this is one reason why they want to do the tokenization of assets. You guys heard about a story out of Europe, how they wanted to set up a digital asset registry. And this is, a very old news story that popped up recently, which indicates they're still working on this, where they're going to integrate people's artwork, they're going to integrate people's assets into the Internet of Things, and these assets will be updated, their valuations in real time. And so you're not going to be able to really hide from these so-called administrative challenges, or it's not going to be at some point a challenge. And so it's going to further the justification for something like this. And so it says, while the U.S. considers a wealth tax on unrealized gains, other countries provide a range of approaches to wealth taxation. So if you're in Europe, apparently, Switzerland, Norway, Spain, and Netherlands, they have different variants of wealth taxes, and an unrealized capital gains is a wealth tax. So in Spain, it says right here, while it does not specifically target unrealized gains, it encompasses the total value of assets, including any unrealized appreciation. So that's basically an unrealized capital gains tax. So whenever you hear wealth tax, think unrealized capital gains tax, because it's essentially what they're talking about. If there's a precedent in these different countries for that, then there are arguments to be made on the behalf of the communists here that, hey, why don't we do that? We need the money. And there's a lot of rich versus poor, wealth disparity gaps that we need to close, and it's not fair these people made all this money and yada yada, right? So let's see. And it's talking about undistributed income, and there is a distinction between undistributed income and unrealized capital gains taxes. Not quite the same thing. And that's one of the things that they wanted to distinguish when they made their ruling in the Supreme Court, because you can tax undistributed income. So if you have an S corp, for instance, and you make money and you have a net profit, you get taxed on the net profit even if you didn't distribute it. Okay. And same thing with C corporations. There's something called an accumulated retained earnings tax, where if you have over a certain amount of money that is just sitting in the corporate coffers, let's say it's like $250,000, I think is the limit is, or more, then they can tax that if, according to them, you do not have what they determine to be a reasonable, you don't have a reasonable explanation as to why you're holding that money, because they want to encourage the distributing of dividends, and of course dividends are taxed, right? So you have those kinds of concerns that are laid in here. But it says here, as the United States debates implementing a wealth tax on unrealized gains, again, this is Forbes, several other countries have already experimented with various forms of wealth taxation. It is important, however, to note that most global wealth tax focus on overall net worth rather than specifically targeting unrealized gains, which is even worse because unrealized gains, you're talking about like stocks, you're talking about bonds. You're not talking necessarily about houses, even though you have property tax with houses, like I just mentioned. Wealth taxes, it's like everything, right? And so, these countries that are already doing that. And basically, what I'm trying to tell you is, okay, as a CPA, I can't say you need to use private cryptos to evade tax. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there are going to be people who are spooked by this and are going to knee jerk into private cryptos because they're just concerned. Because when it comes to taxing authorities, you're at their mercy in their analysis of your assets. And they could do that incorrectly or they could do that unfairly. Whereas if you have Monero and you are a good citizen and you pay your unrealized capital gains taxes, it's up to you to make those determinations, okay? And when the taxing authorities are making those determinations, as many people are finding out with crypto, because either they are getting 1099s and then they're not reporting that properly, or the 1099s themselves are wrong, then you're at the mercy of the IRS. They want that money, and then you got to get into arguments with them, which cost time and money, and then it's just like a big headache, okay? A lot of people are going to cognize this, and then they're going to say, well, the more privacy on my assets, the better. I don't want it locked into some digital asset registry, which could be trying to scheme me and screw me over. So that's one thing to consider. So those are just a couple of comments on things going on with the super hyper mega bullish case macro thesis. This is Russell Brand. I'm not sure if I'm set up to where you can hear this, but I'm going to play this for you so you can hear what he says. This is from David. He says, Russell Brand says that privacy is under threat, and that Bitcoin has the potential to be exploited by governments to become a device for control, surveillance, and censorship. So let's listen to what he has to say.
It's interesting that really Edward Snowden was a person that told us that privacy itself was under threat, that privacy would become a commodity. And underneath privacy, the emotional idea of shame, which is a kind of ubiquitous and at least humanly universal phenomena. And the idea that shame can be exploited to control people is oddly primal, given that what we're ostensibly discussing is advanced technology, cryptocurrencies, ethereal means of transaction that are sometimes difficult to even comprehend unless you understand that world. And yet, as is often the case, it will come down to something extraordinarily human like the feelings of deep shame or a need for privacy or a need to exclude or control or set aside information. It reminds me of the idea that for a long time people said if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Well, who can say that these days when there are continually shifting parameters when it comes to what constitutes shame or fear? So if Edward Snowden's concerned about it, it's presumably something that we should all pay attention to. And Bitcoin, which is being presented and understood, and I suppose in an ideal situation is an opportunity to transact outside of institutions of control and hopefully corruption. Even Bitcoin, Edward Snowden warns, has the potential to become yet another device for control, manipulation, surveillance, and I suppose ultimately censorship.
All right, so he makes a couple good points there. He talks about how this is not just some libertarian thing. This is something that somebody mentioned to me in one of my posts. Well, Matt, this is a libertarian matter. The only people who are interested in private cryptos are going to be libertarians and renegades and things like that. Well, that's what they said about Bitcoin, by the way, at first, and then it became an institutional phenomenon. So I'm not sure if that's a valid argument on that front. But also the fact that your average person does not want their financial transaction history to be public for everybody to see. They don't want everybody to see how much money they have. And I understand there are ways that people could be more private with Bitcoin. They could use the mixers. Which are becoming more dangerous to use by the day because of the arrests that are going on. But also, silent payments I've heard are interesting. I know Cake Wallet's doing some work with that, but a lot of people are not going to do that stuff. They're not going to switch up their addresses all the time. Like, people are not that sophisticated, which is why I like Monero, because it's plug and play, out the box, private. That's what people ultimately want. That's what Steve Jobs understood about technology. He said, you want people to adopt a certain technology, you got to make it as easy as possible for them to use. And that's what Monero does. It gives you all of the privacy features without having to, route through Lightning Network things and all this stuff. Like, it's just plug and play, out the box, private. And people are going to opt to use that instead of Bitcoin. Number one, for the transaction fees, because they're super cheap on Monero because of the dynamic block size and the tail emission and all that stuff. But also because they just do not want other people knowing what's going on with them financially. If your family members and people know how much money you have, they know how you spend the money, like, there's an anxiety there. There's like a feeling that maybe somebody could come ask you of money, or somebody could come ask, like, why are you spending money on this? That's kind of interesting. Or at least they could judge. Maybe they don't even tell you. Like, I run into that as an accountant, right? Like, I see a lot of people's business activity and transactions, and I see what they're spending money on. And sometimes I come across some things that are kind of interesting, to put it simply. I'm not going to say more. But, generally those people do not want that stuff to be viewed by somebody else, even their accountant. And so it's a natural human experience, like he said. And as he said, we got to be careful about these popular cryptocurrencies. It could be we're being goaded into a surveillance system and some kind of censorship system, right? And a censorship system doesn't have to necessarily be top down, enforced through the law. People self-censor. And if you create an environment where people are shamed or are viewed negatively for how they spend their money or how much money they have, and they're part of the 1% or whatever, like, again, that could cause self-censorship, and that could make people not want to say certain things or do certain things, okay? And that is definitely an environment we're in with the oncoming of the internet, and everyone's part of this social grid and whatever. So I thought that was an interesting take. So Russell Brand, he's a prime candidate for figuring out about Monero. Someone's got to tell him. But Vlad Costilla, who is now a privacy bro, this is a guy who I think I had talked about privacy coins with probably 2-3 years ago on Twitter. He's a big Bitcoin guy, and at the time, he didn't see the value in it, and we had a friendly debate about it. And I think one of his main concerns was something with the auditability issue. Like, if people want to adopt cryptocurrency, they've got to have this understanding and knowing that, the money's all there and there's not an inflation bug or whatever. And we've addressed that many times here on the channel. We're not going to go back through it again today. But ultimately, he's come around and he said, Uh, well, he's now a privacy coin guy. He's into Zano, as you'll see over here, Zcash, Litecoin with the Mimble-Wimble. I'm a little bit kind of shaky on the Mimble-Wimble stuff because, as far as I understand, yeah, the blockchain gets pruned and those transactions disappear unless somebody is just keeping all that data before that information disappears off the blockchain. Okay, so somebody could just kind of create their own blockchain, as far as I understand, or at least their map of the blockchain where there's no pruning. And so all those transactions maybe aren't that private. My understanding of it, let me know if you disagree with that, inform me. But he's a big Monero guy too now. And he says, I was told outperforming Bitcoin was impossible and that privacy coins would make you poor if you hold them. But I'm up about 60% up against Bitcoin after 2 weeks. No leverage, no trading, just buying and holding. I believe that the demand for privacy will only increase in the coming months. And, you know, Zano is going nuclear, by the way. It just hit $4 recently, as I think I said before. Do I have a chart pulled up on that? Let me see. Yes, we had a little bit of a dip today, but I mean, just look at this chart. One sec. Let me pull this up. So, um, that's the chart over a month. Over a year, we had a big leg up back in December, and we've been kind of trading in a range. But yeah, I think over the last 3 months, it's gone up almost 100%, or at least it was before it took that little dip. And over the last couple of years, I believe we've outperformed Bitcoin, Nvidia, a lot of the big tech stuff that's out there. So yeah, it's doing pretty good. So let's talk about some cool stuff going on with Monero. Now, you guys understand I'm not a tech guy. There are other channels that are going into more great detail on full range membership proofs and the implications of that. Go check out Monero Talk. Go check out Seth for Privacy and other people in the space talking about this stuff. But they just said today, the Monero page on Twitter, X, whatever, we're excited to share that a pull request, now I don't know what a pull request is, okay, has been made for the full chain membership proofs integration into Monero. I think I've been saying full range membership proofs. Forgive me, I'm an idiot when it comes to this stuff. But the pull request is a work in progress and will be improved upon and reviewed to ensure soundness of the implementation. And I believe Fluffy Pony said that this is great. Um, from what I've heard, this is going to increase the privacy by like multiples. Like it's going to make it insanely private. Don't ask me more. Yeah, so Scylla, what's up, Scylla? Shouts out to you. Every Monero input goes from an anonymity set of 16 to 100 million. That's what she says. Okay. She's pretty smart. Fluffy Pony says this is a big deal, very big deal. Um, Offline transaction chaining. Okay, yeah. So you're gonna have to go to people who understand this better. But from what I understand, it's gonna make it more private, which is cool. So Luke Profits shouts out to you. He's working on the Monero payment request protocol. And this is that subscription feature that I was telling you about before that's going to have a lot of use case when it comes to e-commerce, when it comes to people having subscriptions for Monero. So I'm going to make use of that. I know a lot of other people will too. So go follow the Monero payment request protocol if you want more information on that. And then here's a little something on XMR chat. This is from Aaron Day. I just received my first Monero tip using XMR chat. I actually just made my own XMR chat today. And so this is my page. It is, I'll put a link in the comments. It is xmrchat.com/MoneroCPA. And there you can send a tip, which is kind of cool. And it makes it really easy. I just tipped Aaron over here, and you go to the page, you put how much you want to tip, you put a comment with the tip, and it directs you to your Cake wallet where you can just automatically make the payment. It's got all the information there already auto-populated for you to just click send. So they make it really easy. It's really great. Shouts out to Vic. Shouts out to Doug. Everybody working on it. Pretty cool. Houndahausen, he says he's running Haveno Plus on Graphene OS. Um, and so I guess he's using the mobile app where he's doing it mobily to do decentralized peer to peer trades with Monero. Pretty sweet. Now, I've not used Haveno yet. I'm waiting for it to become a little bit more user friendly. Again, you guys are probably smarter than me when it comes to 90% of this stuff. I just use Monero, and I encourage people to use Monero. I'm a businessman who uses stuff. Like I'm not totally like sophisticated in all this stuff, but people have been reporting good things about Haveno, and go check it out if you're able to make use of it. There's also the XMR Bazaar. I actually forgot I made a page on XMR Bazaar. I haven't checked it, so if you've hit me up on there, I put my accounting services on there. If you are on XMR Bazaar, then I have a page there somewhere. And shouts out to Fiat Demise, who I think got me in touch with me to make a content or business page on there. I need to go back and check on it, man. I'm sorry I haven't, but apparently cars are being sold according to Doug. Used cars are being sold on XMR Bazaar. So apparently this happened in South Africa. Sweet, cool. And he says Monero is gaining, unstoppable momentum as the crypto people actually use it for transacting peer to peer. Well, great. Very cool. Very cool stuff. And I think that's just about all I've got. I've got some like price stuff over here we can kind of check out pretty quickly. But Schmidt, he says non-use is celebrating. It's a chart of 75% of the Bitcoin not having moved in the last 6 months, which to me isn't a great thing because just people aren't using it. That's what that says to me. People are just holding it as if it's digital gold, right? And we've made the arguments against digital gold. I don't believe that digital gold is a thing. I think it's an oxymoronic statement. And I think Monero is more like digital gold than Bitcoin, if we were to call anything digital gold, because of that inelastic demand. Now, the Bitcoin bros, they're trying to establish inelastic demand by creating a certain exclusive regulatory environment for themselves. With the ETFs, they want to be treated as a commodity where everything else is treated as a security. They want special regulatory treatment. If you get special regulatory treatment, then you create an inelastic demand. But from what I've seen, it looks like Solana, Ethereum, these other cryptos are getting the same kind of treatment. And if these other cryptos get the same kind of treatment, then I don't see why there would be that inelastic demand. The digital gold prospect becomes kind of dubious, in my opinion. Now, I understand it's got the first mover advantage and it's got all that, but ultimately, something that isn't used atrophies and dies. And as the halving continues and the transaction costs go up and nobody does anything about these things, you're going to have that security problem which creeps in. And if you have that security problem just hanging around in the background where you can't pay the miners in order to secure the network, then really how much of a digital gold is this if you have that kind of problem lurking in the background, which Monero has addressed through tail emission? Just a question I'm asking. Let's see. And Aaron Day is talking about using Zano, Monero, Bitcoin Cash, and other cryptos in order to get into self-custody assets. I'll talk about the whole 401k thing and retirement thing another day. Because I am a CPA, I know a little bit about this stuff. But ultimately, I do wonder why people get into retirement accounts. I advise on this stuff all the time, but if you're a youngster, you're under 30 years old, are you looking forward to waiting 29 and a half years before you can withdraw your money without paying that 10% penalty that you pay if you're doing an early distribution? And there are exceptions to the early distribution, but generally it's that 10% penalty. Where do you see the world in 29 years? And I just, Aaron thinks that there's going to be what he calls a great taking. And I've done a little bit of research into the great taking where essentially what you do when you have a 401k or IRA or you have a brokerage account is you become a secured beneficiary rather than a security owner. And essentially what you do in that scenario is you give up your custody of the stocks and the bonds, and you give up your voting rights. And that's why people say BlackRock and these big institutions have so much power, is because you give your voting rights to these institutions who then vote on the matters of corporate boards. Like, how rarely do you get those pamphlets in the mail when you invest in a company where it says, hey, like, how do you want to vote on the new CEO or the new executives or these new initiatives that we're doing? Like, you don't get those because you give up those rights. According to Aaron Day and according to the people who are into this space of the great taking, which I need to do more research on, according to them, you give up those rights. And if there is some kind of collapse, some kind of liquidity problem, then the belief is that you're going to lose custody of those assets, and it'll be kind of like a big bail-in, where you invest money at a bank, they loan it back out. Essentially, it's a loan that you're giving to the bank. And if the bank goes down, then you're an unsecured creditor and you lose your stuff. It's similar, I guess, with brokerage accounts and retirement accounts, according to Aaron Day. And if that's the case, you don't have self custody, you could be screwed at the end of the day. So that's what he's saying there. He says Zano, Monero, and Bitcoin Cash are solutions. So just something to comment on that. And we'll do some like cool chart stuff, whatever. So here's a Monero chart. You have these interesting spikes here, but it always settles back into a kind of medium. But that's what inelastic demand looks like. And in this chart here, you've got exchange delistings, you have propaganda against Monero, you have it more difficult to get, and all this stuff. It's maintained its value pretty well. Apparently, somebody just put in $1 million buy order on an exchange for Zano. So yeah, there's just more and more interest in Zano, is what it looks like. The privacy sector is going to be more needed than ever with governments going after people in crypto. This is from Crypto Alucard. And he's basically saying it's going to go hypernuclear. So, and that's all I've got for you guys. So, that's the situation. Our thesis is playing out as we anticipated. Developments continue to happen to bolster Monero's privacy, and the ecosystem is growing to make it more user-friendly and more versatile in its use than ever. So I'm pretty psyched. And yeah, good to get back into the saddle and make one of these videos again. And that's all I've got to say. So leave comments, like the video, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And God bless you guys. I will see you soon.